us when we embark on the mission of Project Inspire. The next speaker to close the convention, an outstanding speaker who's come many times to Project Inspire. I want to thank him for coming. No further ado, Finding Family, Rabbi Shlomo Farhi.
It's always a very scary moment when you stand up at a podium and realize, I can't see my notes. I think I know why Chacham Ovadia wore sunglasses. I'm very grateful to Rabbi Orlovsky because now I know I don't have to try to be funny. Because however good I do, I'm never going to do as good as that. So I can just retire the sneakers and get on with what I'm supposed to say. Thank you so much for your wonderful words. So inspiring, so genuine, so authentic. Oh my gosh. Not an ounce of condescension. You are a master of your craft, a tremendous, tremendous educator, and it was an honor to witness you coming of age and growing up. Very special. I also had the side view, so while everyone saw you from the front, I think I was the only one that got the role model joke. Let's begin. My grandfather used to love telling me interesting jokes. Almost always, they were not so appropriate. He was a survivor of the war. They kicked his door down when he was only 8 years old on Kristallnacht in Bonn in Germany. And when he came to America, after having gone through the war effectively as a child on the run with his father through England and eventually to New York and eventually to South Bend, Indiana, the one thing he thought of to himself is the last thing I want to know or be identified with is from Judaism. He joined the Reform Temple in South Bend, Indiana, and I think mostly that was a way of not being that identifiable thing that he was once hunted as a child. It was a remarkable journey, and the last couple of years of his life, when he moved in, he wasn't well with us, to see someone finding Yiddishkeit for effectively the first time in his adult life, going to shul in a wheelchair, saying Kaddish. It was a tremendous honor to our family to have him with us for the last 2 years of his life. But I don't know if he kind of got the gravitas of synagogue. So he would always tell me jokes that maybe were not so shul-friendly, and always in shul. But I want to share with you a joke that I can't say at the Project Inspire convention, because I see Rabbi Sampson is very nervous right now. Someone tell him this is not the non-from weekend. Just have a note for you, Rabbi. It's a joke that he would tell me, he told us growing up, and I heard from my father as well. There was a meshulach. He came to somebody's house. He needed a handout. He needed some tzedakah. He needed some help. So he knocks on the man's door, and the man says, I'm not interested. He says, but sir, please give me 1 minute. I have to tell you, my family, my kids, my wife, the hospital, the bills. It's so difficult. It's so difficult. I'm not interested. But if maybe you could just, I can't. But if you don't have any much, you could do the sign that no. Today, they've elevated it to an art status. don't know if you've ever got the jab in the ribs during davening. And now they don't ask you for money because you say, They hold out that credit card machine. And it used to be like, now it's NFC, it's touch. They just start touching your pockets. It's amazing. Anyway, so the man says, I'm really sorry, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. No thank you. The fellow's name was Mr. Mann, M-A-N-N. Any connection to any characters that you know by the same name is purely coincidental. I'm nervous about getting sued after that speech. And the Meshulach, this Rav, Yerushalmi Yid, he says to him, Mr. Mann, I give you a broche, that you should have the broche of Avram and Sarah. The guy, he's about to slam the door. Now he's curious. He's never had that response before. The bracha of Avram and Sarah? Wow. He says, why? He says, mit Avram and mit Sarah, the Rebbeinu Shlomo, he gave them a hey to their name. He added it. Avram became Avram, Sarah became Sarah. I add you a hey to your name, from man to Haman. It's a tricky job, this adding and subtracting letters to people's names, but it seems to make a feature quite a few times in the Torah. And we just read one such example. Not Avram, not Sarah, not Yoshua, but we find in this last week's Parsha an example of this subtraction of a letter. The Pasuk says, V'hanesiim heviu. And the Nesiim brought their gift. What did they bring? They brought Avnei Shoham. They brought Avnei Meluim. They brought the stones for the shoulders of the Kohen Gadol. They brought the stones for the breastplate, for the Choshen, that they would use with the Urim and Tumim that would guide Klal Yisrael. And what was remarkable about these Nesiim's gift is that the Torah seems to look down on the gift. And it's fascinating because in the list of all the things that you could have brought for the Mishkan, the most expensive things were the Avnei Shoham and the Avnei Meluim. And the Torah says, I'm going to subtract a Yud from your name. And in the Torah, it's not written V'hanesiim with the Yud, it's written Vav, Hey, Nun, Sin, Aleph, Mem. They lose a Yud. Rashi says, why is it that they lost the Yud? Amar Rav Nosson, permit me to quote to you a Rashi. It's coming from the Medrash. Ma ra'u Nesiim lehisnadei bechanukas hamizbeach tchila. How come when it came to the chanukas hamizbeach, that thing where you see over and over and over again, like Rabbi Olavsky's videos? That was remarkable, by the way. I actually know that. I remember that first tape. Do you remember that first tape that you put out about Shidduchim? That was unbelievable. It was like all the Bacharim deers in Eretz Yisrael. When I was in Eretz Yisrael, they had it on repeat. They're like, oh, this is the part when you go do it. It's amazing. Such fans. Again and again and again, we hear about the gift of the Nesiim. And they're the first people to come forward. Rashi says, how come then they were first? They didn't come forward in the beginning. Elakach Omru Nesiim, they had a beautiful line, a cheshbon. Yisnadvu tzibur, let everyone give what they give. And what they don't bring, anu mashlim and oisai. We'll fill up the rest. By the way, every single fundraiser in the history of time would love a donor like this. Look, I want to build the Mir Yeshiva. Whatever you guys are missing at the end of the dinner tonight, come to me. That's my favorite guy. But the Torah doesn't see it that way. Kivan sheshlimu tzibur es hakol. There was nothing they could give. Amalacha yisadayim. Amru Nesiim, the Nesiim said, Ma'aleinu lasois. They brought what they could. L'chein isnadu b'chanukas hamizbeach techila. Therefore they came first. They didn't want it to happen again. Ulefi shenes atzlu metchila. And since they were lazy in the beginning, nechsera ois mishmam. A letter was missing from their name. V'han Nesiim ksiv. I asked this question on Shabbos in a shir. How come if you're going to miss a letter from their name, it's only the Yud? But I see my son is saying over to my wife, he's saying an answer. I was like, oh, you know the answer, Yitzchak? Say it out loud, thinking I'm going to get nachas from this kid right now. I only have one son, so I need to milk nachas from the, right? I have lots of daughters I get nachas from, but I got the one boy, right? Anyway, so look at this kid, which is very much harder for Sephardim. Either way, I look at this I look at this one kid and I'm like, go ahead, you have the answer, tell them. He said, if they took another letter, you would just ask how come they took that letter. I said, he's going to be a rabbi. But why the letter Yud? The Chidush Yarim, he writes something unbelievable. He says, Mikan mashma, she'ikar yahados, what is the main feature of Judaism? Tolui bizrizus, it is dependent on alacrity. It's the only time we ever use that word. That, here, and Scrabble. Ooh, alacrity. Yes, okay. Because the ikar, the main element of Judaism is zrizus v'hislahavus la'avodoso yizbarach. An energy, an excitement to do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ube'atzlos nechse lehem yud. And through their laziness, that's the word that the Medrash and Rashi just said to us, through their laziness, they lost the yud. And it occurred to me that perhaps the reason why we take a yud out of their name is because if what was missing from them is zrizus, doing something quick, the fastest letter to write is the letter yud. That's what was missing. Something that you do instantaneously, on the spot, with great devotion, with great emotion. You feel so excited to do something. You jump, you do, amazing. My friends, the Sifrei Musar, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz amongst them in Sichas Musar says that it's a strange thing to say that the reason why they did this was because of laziness. Because there was a reason why they did this. They had a cheshbon. They would make up whatever was missing. So what do you want from them? They had a good reason. And what do we say? No. Lazy. Why? And I want to share with you an amazing story of Yisroel Salanter. There was a question that came to Yisroel Salanter. They had a problem with the authorities, and there was a big question. And they came to bring the question to Yisroel Salanter. Should they try and deal with the problem locally through their connections with the local government officials, or should they make the very long journey all the way to St. Petersburg? It's long, it's far, it's freezing, etc., dangerous maybe. And then they walk in and they say, we want to talk to Rabbi Yisroel Salanter about whether or not we should travel to St. Petersburg or we should try to deal with the issue locally. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter says, grabs his coat, he goes, let's go. They're like, he goes, let's go, we're going. Okay, I guess he made a decision. They get on the train, it's freezing, it's a long, arduous journey, it takes them a long time. They finally get to St. Petersburg. They sit down in the first shul, they get next to the fire, they're warming up a little bit after their long trip, and Rabbi Yisroel Salanter turns to the group and he says, okay, so what was the question again? They're like, the question was whether we come to St. Petersburg. I kind of feel it's hard to get angry at Yisroel Salanter. It's like, gas. I'm sure he didn't do that. Just my imagination. They said the question was whether or not we come here. The question was whether we should waste the time, the energy, the money to come here. We're here now. There is no question. And Rabbi Yisroel Salanter said to them something that I think is so beautiful. And my friends, I think this is one of the things that most people seem to forget in their study and in their practice of Judaism. Almost always, the Torah is not talking about what it's talking about. It's not about Avram or Sarah, it's about you and me. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter was talking to his students, to these people, not just about the question at hand, but an oifen of understanding what a person's responsibility is always. If you're sitting in Kovna, trying to figure out if you have to make the journey to St. Petersburg, you know what you don't have? An honest conversation. Because one side of the argument needs travel, money, freezing, getting all the way there, leaving your family behind. So what do? You figure out a million reasons why the other answer is the right answer. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter said, let's go. It's about the education of our children. Let's go. Now we're in St. Petersburg. Now where laziness is not a factor, travel, money, comfort. Now we're here. Now let's figure out if we deal with the problem in St. Petersburg or in Kovno. What an unbelievable lesson. What we're seeing over here is that it is true that the Nesiim had very good reasons why they should not give money in the beginning. But says Chazal, Yorda Torah l'soif daitun shel bnei Adam. The Torah exposes the deepest, darkest understandings, emotions, feelings that are going on in the human heart. And while we would like to pretend that this is the reason, says the Torah, nah, this is the reason. Umipnei, ulefi shenis atzlu mitchila. It was atzlus. My friends, it was only last week when I had a couple sitting at my Shabbos table. And it was a couple, this young girl, she did not grow up religious at all. She'd never had Shabbos growing up in her home. And everyone at the table was sharing something that they were grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for. Something that they were happy, that they had gratitude to Hashem for. And different people shared different things, their business, this person was promoted, they're wonderful, this person had a shidduch, and she said, I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful after never having Shabbos in my life that I'm at the table. Very nice. Beautiful. It's so wonderful. It's so uplifting. And I couldn't help myself. And I raised my glass. And I said, I want to share something with you. It's not only that you're happy that you're at the table. There's something else here. I want you to imagine you live in Borough Park. You live in Lakewood. For some of you, that might not be so difficult to imagine. I want you to imagine Chas v'Shalom, Nebuch. One of the kids in the family goes off the derech. Oy, lo yaleinu. Nebuch, maybe a second, maybe a third. It's hard every week. You see these empty chairs at the Shabbos table. 4, 5, Chas v'Shalom, right? No one's marrying into this family. 6 kids went off the derech. 8 kids, 9 kids. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Shabbos table is missing 9 out of 10 kids. If there are roughly 15 million Jews in the world, and there's about 1.5 million from Jews, maybe it's 2 now, 9 kids are missing. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to the Shabbos table, Shalom Aleichem, mit zayne beautiful malachim. And who's there? Only one of his kids. Nebuch. I said, you are grateful to Hashem that you were back at the Shabbos table. And Hashem is grateful to you that you were back at the Shabbos table. We have a lot of reasons why we don't do the things that we've been encouraged to do over the last 36 hours. But if the Torah was Yored l'soif daiton shel bnei Adam, are those reasons really the reasons? Why aren't we acting? Why aren't we connecting? What's going on here? My friends, I want to share with you this concept of finding family. The driver of Moshe Feinstein once took him to a wedding. And Rav Moshe told him when he arrived at the wedding, he said, look, I'm going to be here for a while. The driver was used to Rav Moshe leaving right away. So he says, you're going to be here for a while. Oh, why? What's up? He said, oh, it's a car of mine. It's a relative. He said, oh, okay, I'm surprised. I didn't see it in the diary. Real, which I'm not sure. Rav Moshe says, don't worry, we'll be here for a while, then we'll go home. He comes inside, he's introducing himself. Shalom Aleichem. Everyone, wow, Rav Moshe Feinstein's here. Standing up, they come over. The Mechutanim, the father-in-law, the chassan, wow, Reb Moshe, what are you doing here? He says, oh, I came to be Sameach chassan v'kala. Really, unbelievable. He says, yeah, she's the kala's a karav mina. We're craving. You're Kroivim. We wish we knew before. We would have given you Siddur Kedushin. We would have had you under the chuppah. I can't believe it. We're so sorry. No, it's fine. I had a very important meeting. I came straight from the meeting. And he dances with the chassan. He dances with the father-in-law. Unbelievable. Before the end of the wedding, he asks to be taken to the other side of the mechitza. He goes to the corner of the mechitza and he says, Mazel Tov to the Kala, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. My Korav, everyone's, wow, unbelievable, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. They leave. They get back in the car. And the driver of Rabbi Moshe's car closes the door very carefully because he also heard that story. And he says, my hi, what was that? Rav Moshe says she wasn't really a Karv, and he says, I know. He says, but the Kala came to visit me. Rabbi said, hear this. And she told me that she is from a family in Eretz Yisrael. I think she was an Almana. She was a Yisoima. My family's in Eretz Yisrael. We have no money. I couldn't afford to even bring one member of my family. They have money. They have yichus. You know, I'm getting married over here in a foreign country. I have no friends. I have no family. And she says to Rav Moshe, I feel like I haven't contributed anything to the wedding. I feel humiliated. I feel like I'm a guest at my own chasana. I feel like they feel that I'm so lucky to marry into them, but Nebuch, they had to settle for someone like me. He says, I hear. He felt her pain. He says, what would you like me to do? She says, please, could you come to the wedding and tell everyone that we're related? Can we just stop for 1 second, hit pause? How desperate is this girl that she's even making that ask of Rav Moshe? Rav Moshe says, I'd love to help you, but I've never told a lie in my life. She looks at Rav Moshe with big eyes and she says, are you not a grandson of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? Are we not related? Bist du nicht a Korov meine? Rav Moshe says, you're right. I am a grandson of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. You are my cousin. The driver said, so why, when you went in and told them that, how come you asked to go to the Kala side? It's not something that a Gadol Ador would normally do. You did what she asked you to do. He said, because since it was a frum wedding, I didn't know if the Kala would find out that I'd come and told everyone that you were my relative until the end of the night. And I didn't want her to have 1 extra second at her wedding feeling the way she felt when she came to see me in the first place. A core of mine. And I'm feeling this especially today. I'm feeling this especially today because I remember reading a story, and it escapes me now who it was. I think it might have been the son of Yisroel Diskin, but it might be someone else. Don't hold me to it. He was crying at the funeral of his father. And someone said, why are you crying? Your father accomplished so much. He's going straight to Gan Eden. He could not have lived a better life. And he says, I'm not crying because of that. I know my father's fine. They said, so why are you crying? He says, I'm crying because I lost my father and I feel what that feels like. And all these years, when someone else lost their father, and I felt I was being mishtatef b'tzar with them, I was with them, imay anoichi b'tzara, I felt their pain. I realized today I didn't feel a drop of their pain. Because now I know what it feels like. And I never felt like this before. I'm talking to myself here. About a week and a half ago, My cousin's son, 5-year-old boy, Yaakov Yisroel ben Yaakov ben Tamar Malka, was run over by a car, 5 years old. He is still fighting for his life. He's in a coma in the hospital. The whole world is davening for him. How many times do we encourage people to daven? How many shiurim did I dedicate to his refuah shalema? How many things did we ask people to be moichel one another? Hundreds of people have put their fights to bed and been moichel al menas that this kid should have a refuah shalema. Including the non-Jewish nurse who could not believe what she was seeing as the texts were coming in. I forgive, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. What is this, she says? She walks out the room, comes back and says, I had a fight for such a long time. I could never, and I'm doing it also. And I don't know if she knows how to say, L'schus refuah shalema, Yaakov Yisroel ben Tamar Malka. But what I wouldn't do for my cousin's son. And I, who have led a career in working with him for Klal Yisrael, trying to feel and trying to understand, and trying to call them Akar of Meine, I realized this week that I am an imposter. Because when it was my cousin, what wouldn't and what didn't I do? My friends, I want to read you the words of Rabbeinu Bachya. Rabbeinu Bachya says, on this pasuk of the Nesiim, he says, Umikan, please put on your seatbelts. Umikan oinish lekol she'ef shaloi. This is the from one. Okay. Mikan oinish lekol she'ef shaloi lihiyois min hakoidmim b'mitzvah ve'enoi koidem. I got goosebumps when I learned this Rabbeinu Bachya. From here we learn. From here we see that if a person does a mitzvah, but they don't do it right away, they do it later, there's an einish for that. I remember reading a piece in Pachad Yitzchok where Rav Hutner asked this as a question. It says, Ushmartem es ha-mitzvahs, Ushmartem es ha-matzahs, and the Pasuk, and the Gemara says on that, you should guard, don't just guard the matzahs, that they shouldn't become chametz. Guard the mitzvahs, Ushmartem es ha-mitzvahs. Why? Mitzvah haba liyadecha, al tachmitzena. And you read in Yeshiva, you're like, oh, that's so cute, matzahs, I see what you did there, nice. So convenient for that Dvar Torah that there's no nekudas in the Torah. It's cutesy. Ask Rav Hutner, how are these two things related? If you wait on the matzah, what happens to it? It becomes chametz. If you eat it, you get kares. If you waited for a mitzvah, you have the mitzvah, you just don't have zrizus. No, says Rabbeinu Bachya. You had a mitzvah, you didn't do it, you did it later, oinish. What? Yeah, the yud gets taken from the Nesiim. The Nesiim, that it was their job to raise up everyone around them. That's why they're called Nesiim. Became the same word without a yud, Vehi nose'om. And they were lifted by others. Klal Yisrael showed them how to be. They weren't the leaders, perhaps, that they thought they were, until they got the message. You have spent the last 36 hours hearing all and sundry, all the ways that you could change a person's life forever. With an invitation to a Shabbos meal, with a mishloach manos, going on a trip, being on one of the retreats. Unbelievable. Talking to someone in the office. There's so many different ways. You've heard all the ways. But my friends, what are we doing now? Right here, before we leave, where you know what, we'll come up with a million reasons why we can't and why we shouldn't, and they'll all be frummer. Each reason will be frummer than the one that came before it. So what do? You jump when you hear it. You think of that person and you commit, you travel to St. Petersburg. And once you're already there, you're comfortable being uncomfortable. We need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's not easy to go and invite this person for Shabbos. It's not easy to ask them if they want to learn. You don't want them to look at you like that annoying religious person in the office. Travel to St. Petersburg. Once you've taken that out of the equation, then all of a sudden you realize I can, I will, I must. I hope and I pray that we, each and every one of us, should be zeicha to feel in our heart of hearts that yud, that yid that's missing, that doesn't have his connection. He's our family. He's our cousin. What I wouldn't do for mine, what you wouldn't do for yours. Tehillim groups, all sorts of programs, chesed, mechilas, alles. For that one nebuch, yeah, my cousin, they have someone. They are your cousin. They are my cousin. They are our achrayas. If we take this seriously and we jump, we learn one other lesson from the Mishkan, and that is, even if you don't know how, even if you don't have any training, even if you never went to a seminar, you never took Ashes or Sameachs or Chabad or whoever's training seminars that had to be a Kiruv professional. You're a Kiruv amateur. You have no idea what you're doing. It doesn't matter. Klal Yisroel left Egypt without a single skill. And what did they find when they came to do the work? They showed up to St. Petersburg. And suddenly, Matzu B'tivam, says the Ramban. They found that the answer was already there. They knew what to do. They knew what to say. They knew how to act. And they were able to bring a tiny bit of the Am Yisrael back to the table. My friends, Moshiach is going to be the time when all of Klal Yisrael is back at the table. And I always say there'll be people that when Moshiach comes, they'll run up to him and take a selfie. Poor guy's trying to get away, but all he's got is a donkey. Some people will say, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And some people will be able to come to Moshiach and say, I'm so glad you're here. I'm one of the people that brought you. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we say goodbye, I want to thank you all, more than all the presenters and every one of you who came here to be inspired, to be part of this amazing Shabbos. I want to thank Dr. Stewart and Andrea Heitman for making not only this possible, but everything we do possible. Thank you so much. Mechayel El Chayil, and Hashem should shower you with all the brachas in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Mincha will be taking place here right now. If you'd like to exit, exit quickly. Lunch is being served. And again, the takeaway trays will be after Mincha is complete. Thank you very, very much for coming. Ashrei Yoshev Eisech.